Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kathryn Anthonisen. I am the Vice President External Relations at CANARIE, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this first webinar on our Cybersecurity Initiatives Program, National Alignment for Local Impact. I am here with a few colleagues who will be presenting with me from our initiative partners. I will introduce them when it's time for them to participate in the presentation, but I'd just like to go through a few housekeeping details before we begin. So first of all, this session will be recorded and archived for future use. Any questions or comments, however, will remain anonymous. The recorded video, if you do speak, will include your voice if audio participation is enabled. We do hope this session will be very interactive. So I intend to take 20 minutes to give you an overview of the Cybersecurity Initiatives Program and the impact for your institution and for the R&E community in Canada. Then we'll have 20 minutes where our initiative partners will talk about the specific cybersecurity services that are queued up for you. And the last 20 minutes, I hope we will have lots of questions and answers so that you understand the opportunity that is available to you and how it can impact your institution. Et finalement, si nous avons nos collègues francophones ici sur ce webinaire, nous avons un service de traduction pour vous si vous préférez d'écouter en français. Je vais présenter en anglais, mais il y a un bouton au-dessus de l'écran et vous pouvez choisir d'écouter en français. So our Francophone colleagues, happy to listen in English or in French. I think we're ready to go. So let's start. I don't think I need to tell any of you on this call about the issue of cybersecurity. It's not a recent issue for the community. Next slide, please. You've seen the headlines. These are now dated. We can look at today's headlines and attacks in the US on the State Department, the Pentagon, Homeland Security, the Treasury. Our own Scott Jones from the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity has said publicly that we are at risk of cybersecurity threats from state actors in Russia, South Korea, China, and Iran. We continue to hear about new threats, and the unfortunate reality is it is not when you will be breached, or it is not if you will be breached, rather, it is when you will be breached. So it is a constant struggle to keep ahead of cybersecurity actors in the community. Next slide, please. And because of the nature of the research and education community, because we are so interconnected through research and education networks, through collaborations, through the bring your own device policy at many institutions, because of this interconnectedness across this sector, we are only really as strong as the weakest link that we have, that we have a community that spans small CJEPs to large comprehensive institutions, but they share an absolute need to reach a cybersecurity state that is equivalent across the sector because we are so connected. So when it comes to securing the sector, we are indeed stronger than the sum of our parts. And when we talk about the sector in Canada, next slide, please. This is a view of connected institutions in Canada's NREN. So there are over 800 institutions connected to the NREN in Canada. Over 200 are research and education institutions right up in Inuvik in Northwest Territories and south to Windsor and east to west, and every coast. We are connected through the NREN. We are connected through collaborations. We are connected through the data streams. We are connected through students that move from one institution to another. So the ecosystem as a whole, we believe, needs to move forward together. And by moving forward together, we get to the goal of the Cybersecurity Initiatives Program. And that is, next slide, please, a more secure Canada. It is a bold goal, no doubt, but it is the only appropriate goal for our community. So I want to get into a bit of the detail of how we think we can get there as a community in a coordinated and aligned fashion. Next slide, please. In developing the program, the first thing we did at CANARIE was to go to our community. We understood that the diversity in this ecosystem, from a large comprehensive institution to a small college or an even smaller CEGEP, the approach needed to encompass the realities of all of those institutions. It also needed to mitigate risks at several layers in the ecosystem. So there are the devices that we all have, the phones, the iPads, the laptops. There are organizational needs institutions. There are the NREN networks across the country that connect those institutions in a jurisdiction and then connect nationally and internationally through CANARIE network infrastructure. We need to protect those. We need to protect the whole sector with not only services and tools, but also training and collaboration, so that indeed the rising tide will lift all boats. We also want to ensure that we incorporated many of the existing initiatives that have begun in the sector. Many of you will know about the Cuccio project with the BitSite measurement tool. The NREN, with our colleagues, we have worked on a SIM infrastructure project that secures network infrastructures and also has a team of analysts keeping an eye on threat actors in those infrastructures. And then there are institutional initiatives across the country, whether it's multi-factor authentication at an institution or comprehensive training for teams or what have you. These initiatives have already begun. The Cuccio, the NREN initiatives, and indeed the CanSSOC threat feed, the proof of concept, was already happening in the community. So our challenge was to take a community-wide view, understanding the complexity of the ecosystem and all of these existing initiatives, and blend them together in an approach that could result in a more secure Canada. And for us, that really meant going back again and again and again to the community, understanding what their needs are and evolving the program, and equally importantly, the governance of the program in the community's hands in order to present them with this opportunity. Next slide, please. And the opportunity is to participate in a Canada-wide collaborative aligned cybersecurity program to serve purpose-built for Canada's research and education community. And again, there are other initiatives built by the community for the community, because we understand that's the only way it will work for Canada's research and education sector. There's tremendous strength, there's tremendous collaboration already. Let's build on it and let's ensure that tide rises all boats. Next slide, please. Just to give you a sense of the colleagues we have collaborated with over the past several months, close to 2 years now. Our NREN partners, of course, but also national associations like Cuccio and Cabo, Polytechnics, Universities Canada, you can see them all. They have all had a stake and a voice in developing this program. So let me tell you what we built together. Next slide, please. So the Government of Canada has funded CANARIE for 2020 to 2024 with an enhanced cybersecurity mandate. And their challenge to us is to strengthen the cybersecurity capacity and readiness of the entire R&E sector. So we developed a program with our community partners that would enable specific cybersecurity services and tools to be developed, to be delivered to your organization to enhance your cybersecurity capacity and capability, leveraging the relationships that have been developed by our NREN partners in provinces and territories across the country, the relationships that they have with your organizations. That is a very strong link. So we want to leverage that and make it easier for institutions to absorb the cybersecurity initiatives. And just as importantly, understand that feedback loop through our NREN partners back to CANARIE as we continue to evolve the program. Next slide, please. So I want to talk briefly about governance of the program because it is extremely important. The Cybersecurity Advisory Committee has been struck as a committee to advocate for an aligned, coordinated national approach to cybersecurity, to advocate for that, and also to provide guidance to CANARIE for our funded initiatives. But I would say to you, it does quite a bit more than that. That committee is not a CANARIE committee or it is a committee for the community. CANARIE and our partners in the DRI ecosystem, NREO, have agreed that this will be the advisory committee for cybersecurity activities and direction for our organizations. But given the scope of the community that we have to serve, the 20 odd individuals on the Cybersecurity Advisory Committee, we believe need additional context and guidance about what happens on the ground. So they are the executive committee making decisions about funding, but they are standing committees that we have struck that will provide them with the contextual information that will help their decision-making process. So we have a technical committee whose role is to develop a reference architecture for cybersecurity readiness for the ecosystem, but then also to help us understand the impact of different initiatives and how the technologies integrate and evolve. So that's a very technical group. We have an initiatives deployment group that helps us understand how initiatives are absorbed at a small CGEP or a large college or a medium-sized institution that are helping us understand what the reality on the ground is so that we can design initiatives so that they are easily enabled at the institution. And lastly, we have a trust and identity committee. Many of you understand that our digital identities are often breached in a cybersecurity attack. You think you're dealing with someone, but you're not, because the digital identity has somehow been compromised. And identities evolve and that ecosystem evolves. We need to be very aware of it because the digital identities play such a central role in overall cybersecurity. So we have a specific standing committee to look at that issue. So with all of this context and guidance from community members across the ecosystem in the standing committees and in the Cybersecurity Advisory Committee, we are able to guide this program in a way that addresses priority needs in the community and fills gaps that are currently exist in the community. One last comment I want to make about the governance structure. Measurement is tremendously important. We know Cuccio it was out of the gate early with their BitSite project. As part of our work in cybersecurity, we have struck a measurement and metrics working group. And they report up to the Cybersecurity Advisory Committee. Their very challenging role is to develop a measurement framework, a cybersecurity measurement framework for the sector, which will allow for us to assess the impact of the funded initiatives that CANARIE is launching with the community, yes, but also that will allow individual institutions to assess their cybersecurity readiness against peers locally, regionally, or nationally. And further, our vision is to have the measurement framework enable institutions to identify the impact of cybersecurity initiatives that they have funded at their institution. So quite a rich and robust measurement framework. Of course, for us at CANARIE, the measurement framework also allows us to assess the impact of initiatives. And that, of course, is valuable data as we go and look at additional funding opportunities for cybersecurity for the community. All right, I have 3 more minutes by my own schedule. Next slide, please. So for all of you and your organizations, your priority is your organization. We understand that. And this program will allow you to strengthen your cybersecurity infrastructure, increase the capacity and capability of your team through training and collaboration across the country, and also be part of a growing and growingly collaborative community of cybersecurity specialists in research and education across the country, which is a side benefit, or not a side benefit rather, but an additional benefit of participating in this program. Next slide, please, Christina. Now, for organizations, there is no cost to participate. CANARIE funds our initiative partners, and we fund our NREN partners to enable you to absorb these cybersecurity initiatives at your institution. Having said that, next slide, many of you will say, well, free is not free. But so there is a cost, but the cost is your involvement. That is the investment you are making, that you are asking your teams to participate with their NREN partners and with initiative partners to strengthen the cybersecurity at your institution in line with cybersecurity initiatives that are happening across the country. Next slide, please. Now, for the sector as a whole, I went over this earlier in the presentation. The interconnectedness of the sector demands that we work together. If we are able to rise all boats in terms of cybersecurity capacity, we not only have the services and tools at the institutions, but we have the community of experts that continue to grow, that continue to learn, and work towards national alignment on a range of best practices for securing research and education data. Next slide, please. So how does it all work? Now we'll get into the nuts and bolts. So and coordinates and administers, we support the governance structure. Our NREN partners work with their member institutions across the country. They know them best to implement the initiatives and to support the program. Our initiative partners that we'll hear from in a moment are also working with the NREN partners and with organizations to implement these initiatives. But the organizations, the institutions themselves have a real role to play through the governance structure or through conversations with any of the CANARIE team members to tell us what you need. What threats you're seeing? What are the gaps that you need filled? The community engagement and evolution of the program is essential. Next slide, please. So now, 1 minute over, we have colleagues from our initiative partners who are going to tell you the specifics of the first 3 funded initiatives. So to start, we have Mark Gaudet. Mark is the product manager cybersecurity from CIRA, and he will tell you about the first funded initiative in the program, the D-Zone DNS Firewall. Mark.
Thanks, Kathryn. It's a pleasure to be here. And at CIRA, we're really excited to participate in this initiative. And I'm going to give you some background on the CIRA D-Zone DNS Firewall. So what is the service itself? So the DNS Firewall, what it does is it looks at all of the DNS queries coming out of a network, compares them to multiple threat feeds, and allows or blocks them after examining them against the threat feed. So what it's able to do is it can prevent users from clicking on if they click on a phishing site or a known infected site, it can, at the DNS level, can prevent the user from accessing that site. As well, if malware does get into the network, at the DNS level, you can detect the command and control from the malware and block and disable malware at that level. So as an example, you saw in the news, Kathryn mentioned it, the breach that happened with the US government, was related to SolarWinds software. The malware was distributed as an update to the SolarWinds software, but once that malware operated, it did use DNS and an algorithmically generated domain name to try to contact the command and control servers to get instructions on what to do. So, you know, these domains were part of our threat feed and blocked. So, you know, that's an example of malware. If it does get in, it's distributed a different way. It does use the DNS to operate. So DNS can be really powerful in both seeing what's happening as far as what threats are inside the network, as well as preventing new threats from getting into the network. So if we go to the next slide, please. So DNS Firewall has been operating for almost 4 years now. There's more than 57 higher ed educational organizations using the service. A key part of the service is it's 100% Canadian. It's operated by CIRA. We operate all the software, own the DNS servers that are running the software. We're using software from Akamai. They're our key partner in this service. So one of the things they bring is a high value threat feed. So they analyze global DNS traffic and use that DNS feed to identify new threats. So within minutes of a domain being queried for the first time globally, it's analyzed and added to the threat feed. And you'll see it averages 100,000 new domains are added to that threat feed every day. Within the educational institutions, there's lots of blocks. We see a high level of blocks, especially with student devices, the BYOD environment. Lots of botnets do get on those devices, and lots of blocks to known infected sites. And yeah, there's just a higher rate overall of blocks within a university or college environment versus a business environment. If we go to the next slide, please. You know, as a standalone service, DNS Firewall is going to improve the overall security posture of any organization that uses it. It's easy to implement. There's no software inside your network. It's positioned as an incremental layer of defense that augments the defense of anything you already have. But there's a real opportunity, and the vision is to create an ecosystem around the DNS firewall that leverages both the DNS data, the threat feeds, to create more of a cybersecurity ecosystem. So in this diagram, there's one layer here, which is the DNS firewall, that's providing a layer of protection for the organizations using it. And in this diagram is just randomly, it's the CanSSOC founding members are on the bottom there, sending DNS queries up. There is a threat feed applied. So this would be the CanSSOC threat feed, the Akamai threat feed, a threat feed from CCCS, and then data being fed up. So any organization, there's a tight integration with CanSSOC. So today, the service DNS Firewall does consume the CanSSOC threat feed. So anything that CanSSOC identifies will be quickly added, is going to be added automatically to our DNS Firewall and blocked at all of our servers. So a tight integration there. Another opportunity is to provide data to CanSSOC. So, you know, we have a view of the threat landscape. The more organizations using the service will get a really good visibility on the higher ed threat landscape. What are the phishing attacks that are being targeted at universities and colleges and CJEPs? What kind of botnets are operating? So that will provide information into CanSSOC, as well as other things they could block or correlate to other data to identify what's happening inside those organizations. And then another area that's really exciting is, you know, Akamai uses global DNS data to identify new threats. There's an opportunity to do cyber research on the DNS data. So we are working closely with the University of New Brunswick right now for the past year, CIC at UNB, and we're researching, looking for ways to identify new threats within the DNS data, look for phishing type threats that if we give a dictionary of a university, names associated with a university, we could look for variations on those names and identify specific phishing URLs that might be used. And this would be a way to augment other threat feeds with specific data for universities, and then feeding some of that research data back into CanSSOC. So, we're applying machine learning and artificial intelligence to try to identify anomalies and new threats and augment the whole cybersecurity infrastructure. So in that ecosystem, you see a layer of protection, which has value immediately to all the organizations, and then the opportunity to integrate with CanSSOC and get their threat feed, and then to support academic research and start to do threat hunting and identify new threats within the DNS data that we do get. So that's, in a nutshell, we're really excited to participate in the initiative, and the more universities, colleges, CEGEPs that participate, the more data we have and the more opportunity we have to improve the layer of protection that we're providing. So thanks.
Right, thank you very much, Mark, for that high-level overview. Next, we have Jill Kowalchuk. Jill is the Executive Director of CanSSOC, and she'll give an overview of the CanSSOC-funded initiative in the program.
Thanks, Kathryn. So CanSSOC started a few years ago as a proof of concept to investigate how institutions can work together on the monumental information security challenges that as Kathryn noted, we're also so well aware. CanSSOC isn't an independent organization, but instead we're a collaboration between universities and now growing to include colleges and polytechniques. And our mission is better than we can do on our own, always in partnership. We are in the community or the community, part of the community, working collaboratively to identify and understand the problems and challenges that we're currently facing in the information security space, but also to work collaboratively on the development and implementation of solutions that are tailored and targeted to the post-secondary community so that it most effectively meets our needs, or as Kathryn stated, for the community, by the community. Foundationally, the members of our organization are institutions. Mark noted the founding members, but we've since, as part of our pre-pilot, expanded to include a number of other institutions and colleges that are leveraging our first pilot service that we'll talk a little bit about today. And we consider those part of the community that feed back into how we develop and evolve these solutions. And we're looking to grow that to include as many or all of the universities, colleges, and polytechniques in the sector. CanSSOC is working hand to hand, not only with these institutions, but with a number of other organizations that are in the ecosystem. CIRA, who we've already heard from, CANARIE, who's obviously hosting this organization, the NREN partners, which Kathryn's talked quite a bit about, the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, and a number of other organizations. And we're looking to grow those organizations that we collaborate and work closely with. Next slide. So we use the NIST framework to support our cybersecurity discussions. NIST outlines 5 key areas: identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. And it provides a great foundation for alignment on conversations that we want to have in the cybersecurity space. As I've noted, CanSSOC's focus is better than we can do on our own. And to further this focus, we're really focusing on the areas of detection and response. We don't expect to do this alone. We're working with partners and other organizations on operational coordination. So how can we fit existing services and products and intelligence out there together to make detection and response for the sector better than we can do on our own? So we're bringing together different pieces, whether that be technology, processes, and personnel, to fill gaps, enhance services, develop new services, and make our efforts in detection and response more efficient and effective. So to focus on threat feed, the first pilot initiative that CanSSOC is launching, that is being supported so generously by the CANARIE Cybersecurity Program. This is just one initiative within the broader context of what CanSSOC is investigating and where we're looking to deploy and pilot with the community. So we're working with the community and CANARIE on how we can bring some of these other pieces that we're working together in the future. However, today we want to focus on that first pilot, which is the threat feed. And so while threat feed fits into many of these NIST areas that you see on this, not just detection and response, the value of this service and initiative, it will allow us to provide detection and response to a broad number of institutions in the sector that have a wide range of resourcing or ability, and some of whom might not have the same ability to collaborate with CanSSOC on advanced detection and response capabilities that we'll launch in the future. And more specifically, what we need there is in terms of sending data. And so with threat feed, the advantage is we can get some basic detection and response in a really quick, easy way in support of the institution. And so you've heard a little bit about this from Mark as it relates to how threat feed is integrated into the DNS firewall. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the details. Next slide. So simply put, threat feed is a curated threat intelligence from CanSSOC and with our partner institutional members. It also includes a wide range of sources. So global research, we bring together commercial threat feeds, we curate and receive intelligence from partner institutions, whether that be from what we're seeing on our advanced detection and response, as well as directly from some institutions. We keep an eye on what's happening out in the space, and we curate this data and add and bring all of these data sources together into one consolidated threat feed. For institutions that have more resources in the cybersecurity space, you might say, hey, we're doing some of this already. The advantage of leveraging CanSSOC is you can take the time and resources you spend on those people who are bringing together these different data sources and look at additional intelligence, potentially feed it back into the CanSSOC network, as well as focus on potentially some other areas. And so while you see a list of sources on the left, this isn't intended to be a finite list. We're looking to grow this as we move forward. And so I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about how institutions can leverage this. So on the right, you see a few examples of how you can leverage threat feed inside your institution. And this does represent a little bit of a spectrum. So on the bottom of the spectrum, we see DNS firewall, which Mark has already talked about. And Mark's already talked about how the integration into that firewall is already done. So if your institution signs up through the cybersecurity program, both to the DNS firewall as well as threat feed, to leverage the threat feed in your CIRA DNS firewall, that's done by checking a box on a configuration page. It involves little to no work and effort from your institutional perspective. You also have the ability to take the threat feed and integrate it directly into a next-gen firewall that you might have on campus. And so in this case, it does involve a little bit more configuration. Your technical team would meet with our technical team. The institutions we've already onboarded in the pre-pilot phase, it takes about 2 to 3 hours of work. But with 2 to 3 hours of work from your technical team, it is very much a set it and forget it. So any traffic that looks to come into your network through your firewall, if you're blocking off of the threat feed, then you are automatically preventing that harmful traffic of coming into your network. So still quite simple and easy to use. We also have intrusion detection system. And so as we move forward with the IDS program, we're looking on how we can integrate this either directly at connection devices, as also using those endpoints that you have on campus in your sensors to support and leverage the threat feed. For those institutions that have more resources and in the information security space, you can take our threat intel, integrate it into your own threat intelligence platform that you have on campus, and again, focus on identifying new and other sources that are impacting your institutions. So the advantage, again, on the threat feed side of things is really with very minimal effort, your institution can leverage the energy and effort from a wider range of your partners inside the sector, as well as from a range of other sources. And we're looking to partner with CANARIE and CIRA and others as we move forward on new and additional services and how we can use this in the future. Kathryn, back to you.
All right, thanks very much, Jill. Next, we have Dr. Mourad Debbabi. He is the interim dean of the School of Engineering and Computer Science at Concordia. Over to you, Dr. Debbabi.
Thank you so much, Kathryn. So the primary intent of the intrusion detection system, or what we call it previously, the Joint Security Project, is to design and implement a capability by which the participating institutions that are universities and colleges agree to deploy a sensor, which is basically a sort of an IDS that will push logs to an aggregation center. In this project, we have 2 aggregation centers, namely Concordia University and University of Waterloo. So we get the logs from different sensors, and then we aggregate the information coming from different participating institutions. And then we subject this information to analytics with the purpose of extracting intel on what we see on the institutional academic network. So if we see any attack or if we see any signs of a campaign, we will provide intel on these attacks together with the attributes of the attack. So in terms of number of institutions that are participating, we have 137 participating organizations, and many of them started sending data basically to the aggregation centers. Next slide, please, Kathryn. So the primary objectives of the IDS project is to generate timely threat intelligence that can be used to prevent or detect attacks against academic institutions. So one of the major objectives is also to quantify the severity of these attacks, which will enable basically to measure the security posture of each institution and then be in a position to do some risk assessment, which will enable basically mitigation. In addition, it will allow us to track the trends in terms of cyber attacks, the trends in terms of the posture of the institution, and to benchmark basically our security against the security of the aggregated data. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, in terms of architecture, we just collect meta information. It's security relevant information from sensors that are deployed within institutions. This data is communicated through a secret channel to aggregation centers, Concordia and Waterloo. Then the data is aggregated, subjected to security analytics. Threat intelligence is generated, and it's pushed to a portal that has also a reporting capability. And then we give each participating institution access to see their alerts and the details of the threat intelligence that has been generated for them, and they can dig into this threat intel and see the details of the threats that we see on their data. In addition, they can have access to the aggregated portal, in which basically we give them some descriptive statistics about what we see in other Canadian institution networks on the aggregated data, without disclosing what is where the attacks are and which institutions have been victim. Next, please. So in terms of capabilities, we did design and implement several security analytics. So for example, we take connection data from these sensors, which is metadata, not the actual data, no payloads of traffic or anything like that. And what we do with this data is we try to see if these connections are malicious or not by aligning this metadata with metadata that we generate from running known malware in controlled environments. By doing so, we are able to label or to flag those connections that are deemed malicious. In addition, another capability is that we run anomaly detection algorithms. And by the way, the malicious fingerprinting, it uses advanced machine learning models, a variety of models to flag a certain connection to be malicious or not. We run as well machine learning based anomaly detection with the purpose of segregating anomalous connections from benign ones. Besides, we don't just flag isolated attacks, we look as well at the self-correlation between separated attacks. And whenever we see some evidence of similarity or some evidence of orchestration or coordination, then we label these attacks as campaigns. So if they see that they have the same attributes, these attacks running from the same infrastructure, exhibiting similar behaviors, then we deem them as campaigns. So we provide the attributes of the campaign that we detect. Besides, as I mentioned before, we leverage a passive DNS feed that we have and the passive DNS database in order to monitor in near real time the mapping between domains that belongs to an institution and their IP space. So for instance, if we see that a legitimate domain is pointing to a malicious IP, we will flag that. And conversely, if we see, for example, that a legitimate IP is pointing to a bad domain, we will flag this as suspicious. So based on the data that we have in a passive DNS stream. Next slide, please. Another interesting capability that we have in the IDS/GSP platform is that we fingerprint possible common vulnerabilities in the deployed services on each academic institution. So we generate this report by matching the open services and the version of the stack that is deployed there with the NIST Common Platform Enumeration CPE database. And if we see that some services are vulnerable, then we will report on that. In addition, we look at the services that are deployed, that are exposed publicly, and if these security services are deploying vulnerable tools or applications or services, then we generate alerts about this. One of the, as I mentioned, the most important features of this platform is that we aim at quantifying the security posture. This is a gap that exists in cybersecurity in the public and private and even academic institution. Then they use as security metrics the number of attacks. So we try to go beyond that and leverage some of the indicators on the severity of attacks in order to try to quantify the security posture of an organization and allowing them to track this over time and see if they are improving or not. So in essence, that's one of the most interesting projects that I have been involved in, and I would like really to thank CANARIE for the opportunity and the leadership to bring together a large number of academic institutions to work together, to share information, and to generate out of this information threat intel that can help us to enhance cybersecurity in the academic networks.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Debbabi and Mark and Jill. A few final slides before we get to Q&A. You might be wondering how to participate in this program. It is a very simple process. You will be contacted by your NREN partner in your province or territory. There is a short form you submit to CANARIE, and it's a very standard, very lightweight participation agreement that says, yes, you are participating in this program, and then you can determine which initiatives you want to ingest or not. But that OCCA, it's called Organizational Agreement, is the foundation for it all. So your NREN partner will be in touch with you about that. Agreement, again, only needs to be executed once for the length of the CANARIE mandate. Next slide, please, Christina. And is there a deadline? There is no deadline. CANARIE is funded until the end of March 2024. And you can participate at any time, but you need to execute that OCCA agreement. And again, the sooner you sign the agreement and start to participate, there will be a funnel of future initiatives as the community identifies priorities and gaps. There will be another initiatives coming through that funnel, approved by the CAC, coming to the ecosystem. So you will want to, if you haven't already, be in contact with your NREN partner in your province or territory. Next slide, please. And for those of you, if you'd like your IT teams at your organization to get more information, we have a more technical webinar that is scheduled, one's tomorrow over the lunch hour and another in early in the new year. And of course, there's more information on our website there. But at this point in the discussion, I think we can turn it over to questions. And I have one. I think this is for you, Mark. what is the turnaround time from ingestion of attack data to action on blocking from the IDS? Is it fast enough to now allow one to stop ongoing attacks, or is it only post-mortem?
Actually, I don't think that one's for me.
I think Kathryn, that's for me.
Oh,
So,
Abby, sorry. Thank you.
So the platform has been built to be extremely scalable, so it can support billions of connections per day. So, and the turnaround is very, very fast, especially that we are deploying the model. We are not training the models online. So I would say the turnaround is extremely fast. It can be maybe in a number of seconds, or maybe in the worst case, maybe a few minutes. So after that, when it comes to the mitigation, of course, we escalate the intel, and it's up to the organization to take the needed action. So we provide the information on the attack, on the attributes, and it's up to them to block this.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Debbabi. I do have a question now for Jill. How do we find out more information about how an organization can configure the threat intelligence feed into an existing firewall?
Yeah, so you can just reach out to us directly, and we can provide that information immediately. Or as Kathryn noted, I think the intent is once you complete the sort of, sorry, gotta get CANARIE's terms, CANARIE form, and engage through that process, indicating that you're interested in this. Our process is depending upon our relationship with the NREN partners. So as Kathryn's noted, all of the NREN partners are supporting the deployment of all of these initiatives. From the CanSSOC perspective, we're also working closely with some of those where the technical onboarding support is provided by that NREN partner. And in the cases where that is not sort of in their remit or their mandate, then the technical onboarding would be provided by CanSSOC's technical team. So we would set up a 1-hour technical meeting with the institution and walk through how you get access to, how you leverage it, and how you can configure it inside your firewall. We've already tested and deployed it on a number of the commonly used firewall systems. So we have documentation created, and we provide ongoing support by email and or through Slack, depending on your preference.
All right, thank you, Jill. Well, we have 10 minutes left. Any more questions for any of today's speakers?
There's, I see two more, Kathryn. There's
I
one,
don't.
how DNS, how encryption, DNS is
Thank you.
example. Do you want to take those?
Yes. How encryption, DNS as an example, will affect ecosystem efficiency?
I could take that, Kathryn. So
Sure.
one of the trends that is coming out is to encrypt DNS. So the protocol is called DNS over HTTPS. And, you know, DNS firewall does support that. So if users within your network can configure encrypted DNS directly from a browser, and that can bypass security or hide the DNS queries. But if you block access to if you block access to other DNS providers, then they can use the DNS firewall, encrypted DNS. You'll still see those DNS queries, and you'll see the malicious DNS queries that may use that service, as opposed to being encrypted and bypassing your security and going directly to Cloudflare, for example, or Google, someone like that.
All right, thank you, Mark. A couple of questions for Dr. Debbabi. Will there be a customized portal for each participating organization to see the exported data from the platform?
So, Kathryn, yes, we have separate portals. We have one portal per institution that is customized with their own data, and others cannot see that. And it's just reserved to them. And in addition, we have a portal with the aggregated data, where we give some statistical information that allow people to see if if this attack is just them or how many occurrences of such an attack that we have seen on other Canadian networks without disclosing any information that is specific to these institutions.
All right, thank you. And a follow-up question, Dr. Debbabi, would the IDS integrate with existing ones on an organizational network, or is it a separate sensor?
So if an institution is already using ZIC, then it's part of their security defense. If not, then it is something that will feed the IDS platform, and we send them back intel. And of course, they can consume this intel depending on what we see in on their network.
All right, thank you. Any more questions? Those were some great questions. Going once, twice, 3 times, I think. Well, I want to thank Jill Kowalchuk, Mark Gaudet, and Dr. Debbabi and all of you listening online across the country for your time and attention this afternoon. We hope we've given you kind of the strategic view of the Cybersecurity Initiatives program, the opportunity before you, and how it will impact your organization. But as always, if you have any further questions or concerns, please contact any of us at CANARIE, or certainly your NREN partner in your province or territory. In the meantime, I wish you all a very good afternoon and all the best for the holiday season. Good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks.